The prospect of a post-Roe America is looking increasingly real. Politico is reporting that Justice Samuel Alito's draft ruling is currently the only draft that is circulating among the justices right now. And Senate Democrats just failed to pass a bill that would have expanded abortion rights nationwide. Every Republican senator, along with Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, voted against it. Long story short, pro-choice lawmakers, well, they're running out of options. And that means we as a nation will soon have to deal with the realities and the complications of states with conflicting laws on abortion, creating situations like women in Texas driving all the way to Illinois to obtain an abortion if that procedure ends up being an illicit, illegal medical procedure in their home state of Texas. Make no mistake, white, upper class, middle class, suburban women, they won't have any problems. They'll have that option of leaving their state, maybe even the country, to get an abortion. But for many women, single moms, those holding 2-3 jobs, those women trying to parent the children they already have, those women will have to decide whether they will risk breaking the law to get an abortion. So my question is, are we ready to deal with the seemingly endless social, economic, and perhaps even more important, legal challenges of a post-Roe America? Joining me now is my friend, Elie Mystal. He's the justice correspondent for The Nation. Elie, how are you doing? As we mentioned, Senator Joe Manchin was the only Democrat to vote against the Women's Health Protection Act in the Senate. Here's how he explained his vote. Take a listen.
I was hopeful that the Democratic Party, having control of the agenda, would put a piece of legislation forward that would codify Roe v. Wade. 70% of the American public wants Roe v. Wade to be codified, as has been precedented law for 50 years. To me, that would be the reasonable, rational thing to do. The bill we have today to vote on, the Women's Health Protection Act, and I respect people who support, but don't make no mistake, it is not Roe v. Wade codification. It's an expansion. It wipes 500 state laws off the books. It expands abortion.
With all due respect, maybe not, to Senator Manchin, this is BS. There is nothing stopping him and others from at least preserving the basic parameters provided under Roe and Casey. Elie, what's your interpretation of his professed reasoning for voting against the Women's Health Protection Act?
Joe Manchin did something to stab Democrats in the back? Are you kidding me, Kate? Look, I mean, the issue with Manchin, it's like having a dog who barks at the mailman, right? Like, what'd you think it was going to do? It was a dog. That's what they do. This is what Joe Manchin does. He doesn't support women's health. He doesn't support women's rights. He doesn't support women's access to their own bodies, and he never has. And for the most part, he's been pretty obvious about that. He didn't support this bill now. He didn't support this bill in February. He promised to not support these bills. So, of course, he's doing that, right? The question that I always have is what was plan B? You know, no pun intended, but what was the second plan? Because Joe Manchin going Joe Manchin was always the thing that was going to happen. So once Joe Manchin does the full Joe Manchin, and let's remember, even if Susan Collins or Lisa Murkowski or some of these other hypocrites had changed their minds and voted for women's health, that wouldn't have got them to 60. And all these people have said they're not willing to carve out the filibuster to protect women's rights. So what was your second plan? Because this plan obviously was never actually going to work. It was always just for show.
So, Elie, speaking of plans, I want to play what Vice President Kamala Harris had to say after that vote failed in the Senate.
Vote clearly suggests that the Senate is not where the majority of Americans are on this issue. It also makes clear that a priority for all who care about this issue, a priority should be to elect pro-choice leaders at the local, the state, and the federal level.
Elie, so that's the Biden administration's message to voters. But you and I both know lip service only gets you so far. In your latest piece for the magazine, you talk about the steps that the Biden administration can take now to protect Roe by, for example, going after the Hyde Amendment, which prohibits federal funding of abortions. You write, quote, "So let's talk about the Hyde Amendment and what it says, because when you really look at it, you'll see it's a paper tiger. While it is harrowingly effective at preventing poor and vulnerable people from getting the health care they need, it is easily shredded by a committed executive at the head of a massive administrative state." Ellie, give us that plan B. How can Biden shred the Hyde Amendment, and how can that create a federal option for abortion access?
Yeah, look, voting harder. Absolutely. Go out there and vote as hard as you can in every state that isn't gerrymandering your power away or isn't suppressing your vote. Vote as hard as you can. I'm 100% for that. But there are executive actions that the president could take right now to start securing some of these abortion rights that are being taken away. Let's remember, abortion has been functionally illegal in Texas since September. There are things that Biden can be doing right now. One obvious possibility is for him to make abortions available at federal facilities. Now, the Hyde Amendment says that you can't use taxpayer funds to fund abortion through Medicaid. There are a lot of ways to get around that. In the Hyde Amendment, for instance, in the Hyde Amendment already is an exception for rape or incest, something that Republicans like Sam Alito want to take away. So already we should have a situation where people should be able to go to federal facilities and get health care in the situation where in the worst possible situations. But I also would argue that if you allow the doctors to lease that space from the federal government, then taxpayer money is not being used, and doctors could provide services on federal facilities through that workaround to the Hyde Amendment. Another thing that you could do is repeal the Hyde Amendment. Let's not forget the Hyde Amendment is a budgetary rider that is reauthorized every year by Congress, including many complicit Democrats. Biden submitted a budget in 2022 that did not include the Hyde Amendment, but he caved. Maybe next time, don't cave. Maybe in 2023, which Biden has also submitted a budget proposal that doesn't include the Hyde Amendment, maybe don't cave this time. When the Hyde Amendment comes back up, strip out the Hyde Amendment, and then you can really unleash the full force and might of the federal government. And the last thing I'll say, Katie, and this, I understand this will make certain people uncomfortable, but I am old enough to remember when a former president wanted to build kind of a bigoted monument along the southern border, and Congress explicitly didn't fund his, delusions of grandeur for his wall. And what did that former president do? Well, he called a national emergency and stole money for his wall from the military budget. I wonder if that might not be a thing that, given the humanitarian crisis created by the Supreme Court's ruling, I wonder if that might not be a thing that Biden should consider. A national emergency to provide health care to people. And that could also get around a lot of these congressional funding poison pills. So there are options here.
I was going to say, you clearly have options, ergo the reason why I asked you to be on to give those options. I quickly, in about the minute left that I have with you, want to ask the following. I want to talk about men. Let's talk about men, baby. Why is there no mention of men in these draconian laws that are looking to prosecute women and put them behind bars for making decisions about their own body? It seems to me like a pretty glaring omission, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't explain why misogyny still reigns supreme and why so many men are comfortable with misogyny. One could argue, I've always said that, abortion in our laws have been pushed through the understanding of substantive due process, which is great. I believe in substantive due process. I believe that's a fine grounding for abortion rights. But I would have found them under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, right? If men have control over their bodies and their reproductive system through the entire process of reproduction, however many, minutes that takes, then women should have control over their bodies and their reproductive system through the entire process of reproduction. So if a man can get rid of his prostate because it's malfunctioning, a woman should be able to get rid of her placenta because it's malfunctioning, right? Like there are equal protection reasons why a woman should have a right to control her own body that I think are even stronger than the substantive due process reasons for why abortion must be a legal thing to access in a free society.
Elie Mystal, always reminding us that equal protection should not be a legal fiction. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.